Yeah, so we wanted to discuss issue called cancel rollout manually based on an alert from the UI. And the reason that we're doing a sync meeting is because there were so many conversations in the issue itself that I guess we decided we needed a sync meeting. So let's go back and discuss the problem, and then we'll go into the questions and the comments. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the idea is that in the there's a predecessor issue, which is show alerts in an environment page, where we're introducing the alerts on the bottom of the environment page so that you know that something happens. And in this issue, it's the next step, where now that you see an alert, you actually want to do something about it. And when we did research around this idea of post-deployment monitoring, we found out that there's two approaches that we can take here in terms of what to do when an alert appears. One of them is an automatic action where we see an alert and we, as GitLab, automatically stop the pipeline from running. We stop the job, very similar to the concept that we had with the skip outdated deployments, Shinya, which you mentioned. So it would probably use that same mechanism and say, there's an alert, we're gonna skip this. There's a little bit of a complexity in saying that because not all alerts are equal. So I don't know, maybe we'll start with only critical alerts and just generalize that as any critical alert stops the pipeline, but that's it, like major alerts don't. And at some point we would want the users to manually configure what they want the trigger to be, because even critical alerts, it may be too general, and maybe there's specific critical alerts that they want to stop the pipeline and specific ones that they don't care as much, right? Also, it's very important to say that the alerts have to be for a specific environment, because different environments they're just different, the interest in them is different. So for example, if I'm doing a deployment to my development environment, I really don't care if there's an alert there. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the truth. And then when I go up into staging, I care a little bit more, but the one that's the most interesting is production. So I think as if we want to do an automatic way to do that, which is not this issue, we would probably start with critical alerts on production or unprotected environments. But this specific issue says, okay, now we're not going on an automatic approach, but the user is now in the environment page. They see something is wrong and now they want to do something about it. They want to stop, right? Or roll back. Those are the two options. So that's kind of like an overview of what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay. Before going into the actual proposal, any questions?
Yeah, I think it makes sense, but there are some couple of clarification we need. So like you want to continue?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. So I sent you a link that monitor teams PM like did a speed run thing, right? Can I share my screen?
Sure.
So I think the demo was really nice, and then maybe we should walk through that. So so basically, according to her demo, so imagine that we are SRE, we are taking care of environments, and then you're sticking your nose into Slack if there any incident happening, or there's any ongoing incidents. And then this Slack channel gets a notification from the Prometheus. This is very generic workflow that actually GitLab SREs does the same. They have a production channel and a like there are many bunch of notification like this. So imagine that you're one of the SREs, and then looking at the alerts, and then you see this critical alert, right? And then open it. Something went wrong. And you're seeing that CPU usage is very high. So they need to do something. Something went wrong on this environment. Yeah. And then they do see the details of alerts, and they can even see metrics, right? And then first things they do is create an issue, incident issue. So the issue is already existed. So this bottom is a view issue, but if it doesn't exist, it becomes a created issue. And then let's say that you created an incident issue, right? And then it fills the details. So like SREs, you can discuss what's went wrong on this environment, why CPU usage is so high, etc. So they can discuss here, right? And then so far, they have not visited environment page, right? So we're in this issue, we are talking about like, let's allow them to stop calendar deployments. But in this user flow, there are no opportunity that they visit environment page. So the maybe first question is how, as we as SRE know that we should visit this environment page, right? Yeah. Because so this is the page we take an action. Yep.
We have an issue, which is to add actions to the alerts page as well. It's not this issue, but it is.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. It's kind of like a redeploy thing, right? Yeah. Here. So
let me send it on the chat, and you can open it up so we can all view it together.
We have an agenda, or if you could post it there, it would be great.
Yeah, so the first question is how we let SREs to visit that page, okay? And then let's say, I don't know, maybe we show like, if you want to cancel deployments, please visit the environment page, and we put a link here. Let's say just as a temporarily.
Okay.
And then they figured out that the current deployment is problematic, so they want to roll back, right? And then they visit environment page, and they think this critical are here, right? And then the first question is that is deployment is running at this moment? You have no idea, right? Because you need to visit this deployment page.
Yeah, I was also wondering about that. That was one of the things I was confused about.
Yeah, so this is something we are lacking in environment page, index page today. You have no idea if a deployment pipeline is running or not. So SRE needs to visit here. Like, it's a success. The latest deployment is success, which means there are no ongoing running deployments. So there are nothing to stop, right? So even we show,
right?
Sorry?
In that case, I would do a rollback.
Yeah, exactly. Then think about that. So we see that alert, the line here, something like this, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then we see here, we don't see stop deployment button, right? But still, developers can run deployment pipelines. Now think about that. Someone else is going to merge a merge request. They don't know about the, as a developer, they don't know about the instance. It's matter of ops guide, so they don't care. And then create a merge request, and then maintainer merges it without noticing the ongoing instance. Then it runs a pipeline, new deployment pipeline, right? Okay. And then it gets a new deployment. And there's a race condition that SRE wants to rollback. Developer wants to create a new deployment, right? And then, so there's a, it's basically a dangerous operation. Like operators doesn't want any developers to deploy during, like they're doing the rollback stuff.
Yes, that's why you open those issues that said create a deploy freeze during an incident.
Yeah. So it's basically the issue, but so yeah, like even if operators can stop the current running deployments, it doesn't mean that they can prevent for future deployments. So this is a second concern in this issue. So how we can prevent the future deployments. For example, as an ops operators, we're trying to roll back, right? So visit the environment deployment page and then what the rollback button? The rollback button. It's weird, but they should see rollback button somewhere here to roll.
Can you maybe press the view deployment button, Shinya, on the top?
Ah, sorry. Yeah, that's right. No.
Nope.
No, this is not. Oh, it's
no, they should be there. They should be on this page. They're just not visible for some reason.
Yeah. Well, let's say that there's a rollback button, right? And then rollback to the previous.
Maybe you just don't have permissions to the Tanuki app, Sarah's Tanuki app.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the issue. And yeah, maybe that's all concerns. Dimitri, do you want to add something?
I don't have too much to add, but I do think that the two problems you highlighted are the ones that I fall over as well into finding a solution, yes or no, because it is like we're spearheaded or focused at like stop a deployment, but stopping deployment does not fix the problem. The problem is you as a user want to do something about this alert in your production level environment, right? Whatever that is, automatic rollback, stopping an environment, that is all solutions. It is about us finding the right solution in there. And there's two problems stopping us right now. That is one, we cannot see when a deployment is in progress. And B, stopping a single deployment doesn't do anything because will be a future rollout that will create a new deployment that will override that raised condition, right? Like, do you say that right? Like, yeah,
that's a nice summary.
So so this was the thing that was being discussed, and I think that is the things that we want to get out of this meeting. Yeah.
I actually think those are really great points, and I do want to thank you for talking about two different personas. So I think they're all valid, and I think we need to address them all, but we also need to come up with iterative plan, which means that we're not going to do everything from day one. So
that makes sense.
So as a start, I think adding the deployment view is actually really great, and it's regardless to this whole thing that we're trying to solve, but it's it'll probably give benefits to our users regardless. So I think maybe even before we start this issue, just showing the deployment status on the environment page would go a really long way. And I will go ahead and open an issue for that. Maybe there's one that exists, but if it doesn't, I'll open a new one. The second thing that I think we need to do is, at the moment, only handle the SRE point of view, and not the developer, even though there could be a race condition, we can solve that later. And there's a bunch of issues that you opened up that will also probably solve that, like deploy freeze during an incident will solve the problem of a developer trying to deploy when there's an incident going on, right? So I think that would probably solve that problem. And I don't want to handle it at the moment anyway. It's also in the release management side, so I don't want to couple everything together. But I do think it's a nice roadmap to tie everything nicely together. So going back to the SRE person, one of the things that you highlighted, and it's a really good point, is that the SRE may be looking at the Slack channel and not necessarily going to the environment page where they can actually take some action. So as phase one, I do think we do need to add something to the environment page. And then phase two would be add a link from the incident. But before creating the link, we actually need to create the action.
Quick question, Orit. If from the SRE's perspective, right, is the first thing we want to tackle, as we have deducted from Shinya's demo or walkthrough of the demo of from Monitor, we have stated, all right, SREs will not arrive at the environments list page in any way. It's not part of their workflow. So what is the reasoning behind that we need to add something to the environments list page at all?
Well, it's a fair question. And the answer is that you can't generalize the entire persona into one workflow. And at least as part of the user research that we did looking into this, a lot of the people were saying when they look at production, they look at the environment page first, the environment dashboard. They look at, some kind of overview. Yes, Slack is really great for, ongoing issues and getting up to date. But if you don't think of an external source as your opening point, I would like to think of where's the place that I start when I look at GitLab. If I want to see how my environment looks like, I probably would look at the environment page.
Is there a link you have towards that research insight by any chance?
Let me search for it.
I mean, I'm not saying that this is not a possibility, right? It's just like, hey, maybe there's some assumptions in the research, or maybe this is part of a bigger scheme that we want to move SREs to be that environments list to become part of that workflow.
We did research in a very small subset of users, so it could also be biased.
I have some doubts in terms of solution validating this, because I think if we would implement this solution on its own and then like isolating this out in terms of like a solution validation, I don't think we would ever get a positive result out of it, because it has not yet become part of the flow of our SREs unless we make it so. Like unless we give enough incentive towards the user to say, all right, the environments list is super helpful to you. Like you get directed and navigated towards this because we have, we've completed this flow kind of thing. So just a heads up, like solution validation will not turn out to be great unless we build around that to make it part of that flow.
I want to go back to the user research part, and maybe go back on what I said about the SREs. So the starting point from the research was you have an incident in production. What do you do now? Who needs to be involved? Who needs to take action? What's the flow, right? That was what I was asking the users. And what they told me was, there's the different environments have different levels of people that you need to report to and people that have actually access to it. Everyone gets notified, so it could be Slack, it could be email, it could be an SMS, whatever. People know that something's going on. And then And then whoever has access will take immediate action in order for the production issue to be solved as quickly as possible. And when I say solve as quickly as possible, it could be a hot fix, which means, you know, the user is not doing anything. They're not stopping anything. They're not rolling back, but they're fixing something and rolling out a new deployment. Or they actually roll back. Or, you know, if they're doing incremental rollout, for example, then they like contain the rollout to the users that are already affected and make sure that other users don't get affected as well. So there's different actions. And then people just start drilling down into what's going on in production. So drilling down is also a really nice question to say, what do you mean by drill down? Because some people will look at the environment dashboard. These are people who are not necessarily SREs. This will be the release manager, the product manager, someone who just wants to look at production, and then they see that it's all red, and then they get like really hysterical and start calling up people on the phone. And then there's people that are going to go into the logs and try to figure it out. So it's very, very different. I do like the incident response approach where we're saying, okay, we're starting from Slack. Slack links us to the alert. The alert links us to opening up an issue or viewing the one that exists, and then taking action from there. However, when we look only on a specific alert view, I kind of feel like we lose context of the environment, which is super critical here because different environments, you know, have different metrics and different alerts that are interesting. So I do think like it's a really nice location where we can consolidate a lot of information and drill down from there. What do you think? I'm going to add that specifically for developers that I talked to, they were actually interested in looking at the alerts from the pipeline view.
I'm writing down what you're saying. Give me a second. It is interesting that devs have a certain different flow. Like what I get from your story, which is super valid, but like there's a lot of assumptions. Is there a way that we can potentially test that that is indeed the way that we want users to potentially drill down, or that is part of their flow, that they want to look at, you know, the alert specific page and they lose context / or missing that context? Like I'm feeling like we're trying to move somewhere, but it is a lot of assumptions that we're basing this on. So, I mean, it is a good idea to put it out there and see what others think. I have less of an opinion here, so I want to refer to Shinya to say like, hey, what do you think of this idea of moving it in towards that direction?
To be honest, I'm not really sure. The thing is that alerts are not necessary to be associated with environment, right? The recent monitoring team's refactoring, it's basically allows users to define any alerts, not only promises alert, like what are we interested in, but also like user defined whatever alert system alerts, right? So like all alerts, some alerts might not have an environment association. And then in that case, we don't have nothing to show in alerts page, right? Rather, we should show alerts in environment page because it's a good summary to see the list of alerts to a particular environment.
I actually think it's really, really powerful. I mean, think of a really simple use case, okay? You are deploying to 3 servers. Each server is a different environment. And you configure the alerts from a specific server, which is the production server, to get alerts from there. And I guess you don't even configure the alerting system to the other ones because you just don't care. And it connects the two, because right now alerts is totally siloed inside of GitLab. So you don't get the alerts in context of anything. And think of a release manager even, who might not be as technical as an SRE, but they're in charge of, making sure that that everything's working properly. And now they see on the dashboard that it's colored red, and they know they need to at least call someone to take care of the incident, right?
Which dashboard are you talking about, if I'm asked?
The environment dashboard.
So list view or not, right? Like, I'm always wondering.
There's the dashboard. I'll send the link for it. But I also talked to Jackie about the fact that once we have alerts in the environment page, it'll be propagated to the dashboard, which is like really cool, because it colors the environment red. You know that you need to handle something, and it gives you a lot of added value of what you can do there.
I think it's a good idea to add a lot of information in environment dashboard. Just to be clear, environment dashboard and environment index page are different, right?
Different.
Yeah. Okay. It's out of context from this issue, but it generally makes sense to show alerts there.
I also think in the index page, it makes a lot of sense.
But basically, I don't think that SREs keep watching the environment dashboard unless something happens. They do not monitor environments all the time. So yeah, they don't look at it unless something happens.
But we're talking about taking action when something happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go ahead, Shane. I'll go after.
So it's kind of important to consider this feature as a reactive action, right? Not proactive things. Starting from thinking about this feature from the Slack is very valid point, and that's a very important perspective.
I agree. I think it's a really nice flow. But still, let's go with the SRE flow. I went to Slack, I saw an incident, I pressed the incident, and now I need to do something or have a link to somewhere. Where would that somewhere be, right?
Can you repeat? Like, where are we?
So I don't know if you saw Sarah's demo, it's very similar to what Shinya showed. So I'm an SRE, I went into the Slack, I saw a message, there's a CPU over 95%. Now, it's very minimal information that I have in Slack. So I click the link, it opens up in GitLab, I get to that general page. And then, so this is even a step after. The first step was I got to this very general page that said view. Thank you, Shinya.
Clicking here.
Yeah, there. So I got here. Now this is also very minimal. I can't do anything from here. The first thing that I would do is open an issue, right? And this is the button that you see on the top. It says view issue because she already did it. So you view issue, and all the data that I had from the alert is copied into this issue, and it gets assigned to someone to handle. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, without touching this flow, we want to add a link here, or even in the previous step, that lets you take action on it, right? It says stop deployment, or do a rollback, or something. but it needs to link somewhere. And Shinya, in the beginning of our conversation, had suggested that this links to the environment page where we're going to add that action. Now, I'm okay to discuss revisiting it and adding a different link, like maybe the deployments page. But since we're adding the alerts into the environment page, I think it's kind of like obvious that we add the actions there as well. But I'm open to hearing your opinion.
To be honest, linking to the deployments page makes a lot of sense. Because if we would show alerts, like I'm less familiar if I'm now speaking correctly here, but say that an alert has happened on a certain environment, can we see for which deployments this alert is true? And if so, if you want to roll back, say if that is the action you want to take, right? And there has been 7 deployments already that have this same alert appearing on it, then you don't want to simply roll back to the latest version or the version before that, because it's 7 deployments back before that alert will not be apparent anymore in your production, because there's already 7 deployments that include that bad code, so to say, and there's like 7 new merge requests on top of that have been deployed. So you want to roll back 8 versions back. That is the deployment where you want to roll back to, and then freeze, fix your code, and then start redeploying, right?
Yeah,
that sounds really, really powerful, Dimitri, but it sounds really, really complicated and something that we could probably accomplish in many, many milestones ahead. I'd like to break this down to what we can get, because if we can't even figure out alerts per environment, finding out an alert per deployment would even be more complicated. Now, tying into which Monitor is already working on and already has like some kind of support, they have annotations that they're adding to their dashboard charts. So you know that a specific something happened on a specific date that you added the annotation that this was deployment, whatever. But you really need to be vigilant in entering that data manually. I would like to take a step back and talk about, still iterative. I think your vision is great, Dimitri, for the long run, but where is the starting point? The starting point, I think, is seeing the alerts, first of all, in a general sense.
So my assumption, like that was like an assumption, like I don't know if we are right, like say that we tie alerts to environments, can we then immediately see them tied to individual deployments or not?
No, probably. Like I don't see it, because the way that I'm thinking of it, hopefully someday, yes, because that would be like super powerful. It would be amazing. You could even see like which version ruined, the performance of the behavior, which would be awesome. But the way that I'm seeing it is you have a lot of developers applying, and the metrics, they happen all the time. They're being pulled all the time. It's really hard to point your finger and say, okay, this specific degradation happened because of this merge request, for example. I think that's hopefully one day, but I think for now it's too hard. But maybe Shinya has a different idea.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I missed that. Okay. Oh, sorry, what's your point?
So I said that
Yeah,
it would be really, really complicated to figure out which alert happened due to a specific deployment.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion. Because I saw that Monitor team actually has a great feature to show a deployment on matrix page. For example, it's not currently visible, but let's say hey, you had a deployment at this timeline, like 6:25 p.m. Like there's a launch icon
Yeah, that's the
shown on the
annotations
like
that I was talking about.
yeah. So it's a great feature, and not sure. Uh, but even so, it doesn't mean that deployment is related to the incident, right? Because incident could happen by any reasons, not only deployments. Like deploying a bad code is not only reason, but also like, for example, some external service had an incident. For example, like a GCP had a production incident, and then of course your infrastructure is affected.
Yeah.
And then you got a tons of alerts, but there's nothing you can do, right? And then of course your deployment is unrelated at all. So in this case, you don't want to roll back at all. Yeah.
That is interesting. Yeah. So are we able to differentiate between alerts from external services versus internal changes? Like
it's impossible. I don't think so. Sometimes it's tangled. Like even in a deployment GitLab case, we are still like, we need to investigate at first, like what's wrong in our code, or like something different. We need to spend like SRE needs to dig into that problem. So it's impossible to automatically detect it. Or
okay.
maybe even so, like it's gonna be I don't know, unreliable feature.
So if we look back, right, towards the like the idea we were linked towards, we cannot link an alert to a specific deployment, but we can, in most cases, tie it back to a certain environment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what? I mean, like I'm like the thing that was talking about this future, like this is a Dutch saying. We say future music, music to be played in the future. Anyway, but link towards the environments page to give that context sounds like something like an idea, or adding a tab here that immediately showed it.
Yeah, it's a very good idea. Yeah, I 100% agree with it. So like even like in overview, we can see an environment, right, in the link. Like we have no idea. Like for example, we have two environments, right? Stage and the production. Can you say that which environment is ready to do this art? No, right? So we want to see something here. It's related to production, or it's related to staging, or none of them. The third case is also possible.
Maybe, but for a first iteration, Shinya, just linking to the environment page as a whole.
Yeah, that's great. That's great step, I think.
In that case, I would say that if we make the link from an alert to an environment, if that is there, if that is existing, then it would also make sense to be able to loop back and navigate back from the environments page towards the alerts page. In that way, validating the original idea of the other issue, right? The other issue of alerts shown on the environments page, and then this is the other way around. But yes, we're losing, on the other hand, I would say like, all right, we got this down, this is a good idea, but we're not directly giving access for the user to roll back, even though if we would show in the alerts page, but like the deployments of the environments directly in like a tab, then they could choose, if they have the right permissions, to roll back to whatever version they want to go to, right? Regardless.
Well, no. For this first iteration, we're not going to let them choose. Oh, unless we go to the deployment page where you can choose whatever you want to roll back. But the way that I was envisioning this, and this is something that I also validated during research, was people just want to go back to the last successful deployment. They don't want to select the version. It's a feature that Spinnaker has, that you can select the version. But every single person that I asked told me they always go to the previous successful deployment. They don't ever go backwards. So we may explore that in the future, but I don't think that's part of the MVC in any way.
Yes, sounds good. That makes sense. If it doesn't come from research, then yeah, for sure. And as we cannot tie it down to a specific deployment anyway, I do agree with that. Yes.
It's really nice to show the latest stable deployment in this page. The thing is that, as you said, it's hard to figure out which one is stable, latest stable. For example, this deployment run for a week, and no end users figure out that there's a bug, but it could rebuild at the next week. So it's really challenging to label what is a latest stable thing. This is out of context, but
latest green. We're gonna make this really simple. The latest green pipeline.
It's not really called to latest stable deployment. I do not think so. The thing is a bit more complicated, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I just think for an MVC, that's what we'll go for. The reason is there's always going to be a bug. There's no such thing as a bug-free version. But the more you go away from what you have currently in production, the more you're far away from master, which makes it even more complicated. We don't want to try to go into, conflicts and resolving, code that came out and that you need to take out. So I think it's simpler just to go that latest green, regardless of how long it's been sitting there. Different companies.
Just a question for it. Latest green pipeline. My assumption here is, isn't the pipeline always green if it had a successful deployment towards an environment? Or am I wrong to assume that?
There are deployments that fail, and then the pipeline will be red. We don't want to go back to those.
So a pipeline can fail, but still deploy to an environment?
No, probably it would fail before.
So then it will always be the latest deployment before the previous, before the last deployment.
Yeah. It's actually similar to the concept that we have on review apps, right? Where you have a button that says view previous deployment or something like that. And then you have view app and view previous app or something like that.
Yeah, it is one of those things that hey, deployment is in progress, but while it's running, we still got the latest one running. You can look at that until this thing is done, right? So we roll back to the latest, the last before the current version.
Yes. In case it's green, right?
Which it always is, right?
Well, I don't know. Shinya showed on the deployment page. Shinya, can you go back to the deployment page? So there, you see there's some failed. I don't want to try to go back to one of those, right? That's my point.
Or is a deployment, is it made, but it never really deployed, but we see it as a deployment anyway because the pipeline tried? Is that considered a deployment? I was, you can see if after the failed ones, the deployed date is empty, right? So it has been created, but it has never been deployed.
Yeah.
So yeah, roll back to latest green one doesn't change anything. I think it's at least a step in the right direction, right? We allow some part of action being taken from a page that is within the SRE's flow. At least we navigate them towards it.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's conclude. The action we're going to take is that we will create some way for the users to navigate towards the environments page, including the deployments that is in that page, if there is an environment tied towards the alert, right?
Yes.
All right. Did we conclude on anything additionally to that?
Yes, I need to open an issue for deployment status on the environment page.
An issue for, sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, we want to show the deployment status on the environment page that's currently not visible, so you don't know that a pipeline is currently running.
Yes, I'm a huge favorite. It's one of the things that confused me so much, because if you have a Kubernetes environment, you can see the pods changing, right? But if it's not, like, you're just like, all right, is something going on here or not? Like, I don't know.
I think, but even for the Kubernetes use case, we still need to be really clear saying that something's running. It should just show the same thing as the pipeline, right? Just the same icon. Like when you see an merge request that it's, the pipeline's running, probably something of that sort.
Yeah, that you can see, like, all right, this is the latest active deployment, but this one is the one that is coming up and currently busy, right? Yeah, I agree there. In that case, for that new issue, because it is kind of different from the current issue, would you like to kind of like change, like use the current issue or create a new issue and leave this in the backlog?
We can work on the new issue first. That's okay. In any case, the first issue that we're working on is, even before this, is just showing the alert in the environment page itself without taking any action. So this one should fall anyway. What we didn't discuss in the 9 minutes that we have left is that the icon that you suggested here, which is a frozen icon, like the movie.
It's only if we have an action on the environment list page. So that is like, that issue is now in some way not like, it doesn't mean anything more anymore. Like I purposely made it look awful, so it's a wireframe. It is not a design intended to be final or like anything more than an idea.
Yeah, he doesn't like you.
Yeah, but in any case, I think freeze is a bad word because we're using it for deployment freezes, and I don't want to confuse the two.
I think, yeah, the current deployment freeze feature is a bit, it's too specific to the proposal. It should be a very generic that, even like a lot didn't happen. Maybe they want to freeze at some occasion. So like a freeze deployments, or I don't know, whatever, like a lock deployments kind of thing, lock environments feature should be like an independent feature, right? And then it can be connected to the alert things. Yeah.
It is an independent feature, and that's why I kind of want us to move away from this terminology, because deploy freeze means that on weekends, you're not allowed to deploy. It doesn't mean that if there's an alert, we want to stop something, right?
Yeah, we can say like a lock or whatever things.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I had no intention to say, like, I was just like, all right, this is a freeze. Let's put on some icon to show something. But it once again says like, all right, I should just put it in words, ideally, and then we're going from there. Anyway, like just to come back real quickly on the issue, like we have the cancel rollout. Cancel rollout manually based on alerts from UI.
Yes.
We're going to change that issue towards the idea of making a button appear towards the environment page on the alert, or are we going to create an additional new issue for that, aside from the issue you're going to create?
New issue. So the way that I'm seeing it is we want to go from every direction. We want people to stop clicking around. That's the idea. I'm an SRE. I have a problem. I want to get as quickly as possible to the problem. The way that we're doing it now is you need to open the incident. Now you need to link to something from the incident, which will go probably to the environment page, which will make you point on the deployment page, which is really annoying. It's an annoying user flow. So whatever we can do to shorten that cycle is better. So if an SRE starts from the incident, I would try to point at the deployment page directly from there. And if we're starting from the environment page, then I would start from there. I think there's two different starting points, and I think they're both valid. That's also why I wanted to create this action from the alerts page and from the environments page. I wanted from every single direction that you can start with to click as less as possible.
I don't think there are two start points, as long as I see that GitLab's SREs. They always start from Slack or something very responsive place, a service, and like chat service. And then they started digging into the environment details. So I do not think that they constantly look at the environment page or environment dashboard. And then like an environment page is a great place to take an action, right? Stop, lock environments or rollback, whatever things they can take, user can take there. Yeah, these things should be in environment page.
Sounds good. Seems we're aligned. So, or you create the one issue, I create the other one. I'll ping you on it to schedule it in right, and then we're there. So this issue should be taken out of the milestone, right? The current issue.
Yes. Yeah.
Link it here. Should be taken. Sounds good. So, and then future steps, we'll discuss that next time, or do you want to quickly, briefly?
Let's talk about it. We have 4 minutes.
3 minutes, 4 minutes. All right. So after this is done, after we have a navigation item, like we can see the alerts in the environments page. We can link from the alerts page to the environments page. And now we still want to give the users like an even better way to act on their alerts on their environments, right? That is the idea. So what would be the logical next step?
So the logical next step is the 3 actions actually. There's 2 or 3 actions. Ooh, that was scary. So the first action first of all, I also want to remind you that this is for manual action, and we still have another issue for automatic action, okay? So we put that aside, and now we're talking about someone manually taking action. So manually taking action, one of them would be to roll back, redeploy a previous pipeline. So what we want to do is make it really, really easy for a user seeing an alert, either press a button that does that for them directly from the environment page, or make them go through the extra step of going into the deployment page, which is less preferred by me, but if there's any concerns, then we can talk about it. So that's one. The second action, and this is also divided by non-Kubernetes and Kubernetes. So for regular deployments that are non-Kubernetes, I think a logical step would to do this freeze or lock or whatever we want to call it, to not allow anyone to deploy during this time. And the third one for Kubernetes, I want to stop the incremental rollout or canary. So I don't want to allow additional rollout for this faulty deployment. Do you agree, Shinya?
I don't really think that we need to separate Kubernetes and non-Kubernetes. Our auto deploy feature in auto DevOps pipelines are already, how should I say that? It's very generic. It's just all about pipeline definitions and like a job deployment job are separated per incremental rollout percentage, and then it's only just deployment target is Kubernetes, but ideally it should be redeployable. It should be available to roll back with just GitLab feature. It's regardless of Kubernetes or non-Kubernetes.
No, I agree. It shouldn't matter to the user what technology they're using behind the hood. My only concern, the only added benefit that a Kubernetes user gets is that they can scale down. They don't, like, it doesn't have to be in a one shot, right? So if they have incremental rollout configured in the YAML file for auto DevOps, we can say, like, don't do the timed rollout, right? Just stop the timed rollout, for example, or stay at 20%, don't continue. So that's like really nice, a nice benefit that you get from using Kubernetes that you don't usually have on a regular deployment, because you can just stop the pods and don't let them continue.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, like an incremental rollout, rolling deployment, it's called in Kubernetes world. It's a Kubernetes specific things. If the deployment uses rolling deployment, then yeah, it makes sense to take that Kubernetes specific advantages. Yeah.
So those are the 3 actions that I think that we can do, and we don't have to do them all in one shot. We can decide to start with one and then, iterate on it like we like to do in GitLab.
Can we make sure that there's issues for all 3 of these ideas?
Yes.
Will you create them?
Yes.
Awesome.
So we're out of time, but this was really helpful, and I thought this was a really fruitful discussion.
Yes. It really opened, like, I was really like, where are we going with this? Because this doesn't make sense, and the other thing also doesn't make sense. Yes, awesome. I think this was super successful, so thank you so much. I'll create the one issue, and the other action points are yours for it.
Yep. Cool. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.